This Netflix show has created so much drama, and we're going to discuss the disturbing truth behind it.
It's the Netflix hit that everyone's talking about.
It's the box office Netflix series that's got everyone talking.
Britain's been talking about it, Lorraine's been talking about it, I know the Loose Women have been talking about it.
Adolescence.
Adolescence?
At home, we are watching Adolescence with our children.
People on social media are calling you the greatest British actor of all time.
The story of a 13-year-old boy arrested for the murder of a teenage girl.
It highlights online male radicalisation.
I think what kind of a society we're living in at the moment where young boys are stabbing young girls.
Do you want to give us a reason why?
Hello, you gorgeous donuts. Adolescence is a 4-part Netflix original which has hit #1 in 71 different countries, and has sparked the most conversation out of any TV show that I've ever seen. It's like literally crazy, the reaction to this show. The premise of the show centers around a 13-year-old boy called Jamie who has been arrested on suspicion of murdering his fellow classmate Katie. Each of the 4 episodes covers the fallout since this arrest, as we begin to discover the truth why he committed this crime, and honestly, as the episodes go on, the more disturbing it gets. This show also covers a lot of serious topics such as the manosphere, incel culture, online bullying. Genuinely, like, it's a really disturbing series, and I can't wait to get into breaking it down for you. In this video, we're going to do an episode by episode breakdown. I'm going to walk you through everything that happens in the series, the real life implications of the things that they're talking about, how episode 3 of this show is genuinely one of the wildest pieces of media that I've ever seen in my life, and how it's taken the internet by storm. And I just want to put a quick disclaimer before we do get into this. Obviously, we're going to discuss a lot about red pill content, which is something that I don't engage with, and also there's a lot of serious themes around misogyny, and obviously as a man I don't experience misogyny, so I'm very much coming from an outside perspective on both sides of this, but I'm going to try and cover it with as much empathy and give you as much clarity on these kind of themes as possible. But if I do miss anything out, or there's anything you picked up that I didn't mention, please leave it in the comments and like have a discussion about it. And just remember, just be kind, okay? Now we're comfy, let's get into this. So the series starts off with D.I. Bascom and D.S. Frank, 2 police officers leading a squad to a certain house to raid it. And before they enter this house, you see how many armed officers are here, and you know, like, instantly this is a really serious situation and a serious crime has been committed here. Someone hasn't just nicked a Lucasade from the local Londis. They then enter the house and they barge past the parents and they go straight upstairs to their son's room, who is 13-year-old Jamie. They arrest him on suspicion of murder, and instantly we get a little bit of foreshadowing in this scene as we see Jamie's hand hovering over something that resembles a weapon that later in this video you're going to see that he may have used. There is a lot of foreshadowing in this series, which is like remarkable considering every single episode is shot in one take. Like, they don't have any breaks in this. When I was researching this show, I found out they actually nailed the first episode on the second take, which is just crazy considering they're not allowed to have any pit stops at all. I remember watching Corrie when it was live and getting freaked out with like anticipation. This is like a new level. And one great thing about this all being in one take is it really, you know, it builds like anticipation and it builds a lot of emotion, and it makes it a very heavy watch. Like, Adolescence isn't a TV show that you can kind of go on your phone while watching. You need to be locked in the entire time. I honestly think that if they edited this like a normal TV show, it wouldn't create the same emotion. I think this is one of the main aspects of why this TV show keeps you like hooked to your seat. Jamie protests his innocence once he's arrested and gets thrown in the back of a police car, and they're on their way to the station, and the entire time he looks like really upset, obviously, but you never really see his full facial emotions, which kind of, you know, it kind of alludes to, is he hiding something? He never looks directly towards the camera. It's almost like he knows that he's done something wrong. Jamie then arrives at the police station and they ask him various questions, and he just keeps asking for his dad, which is a continuous sequence throughout this series. Jamie never asks for the help of his mom, it's always his dad. However, there's little indications to the audience that his mom kind of knows more know about Jamie. Like, there's little things like she knows that he's scared of needles when he needs to get his bloods taken at the police station. Also, later on in the series, his mom tells him that she's rang the police station to say about his allergies, and he kind of just shrugs it off. Like, you can tell he doesn't really think much of his mom and doesn't really respect how she's looking after him. We then get our first insight into how Jamie carried out this murder, as he used a kitchen knife. We then get our first scene with Jamie and his dad together, and you can kind of see between them that they don't really have like a very loving kind of chemistry here. His dad's reassuring him a little bit, but they kind of seem very distant from each other, and I think this reflects like a lot of like, you know, father-son dynamics where they don't really know how to express their love to each other. It's very like man up and just, you know, kind of just we're both just being ourselves here, we're just kind of both being awkward. And we see this even more when Jamie does go to get his blood test. Like, he can't even look at his dad in the eye when the doctor's like telling them to do so. You can tell that they're just not, it's like they feel like weird in each other's presence. I feel like if his mom was in the room, like he may be more at ease, in my opinion. Like it's just a little bit off their dynamic. Jamie and his dad then meet with the lawyer. The lawyer asks him a few questions. He asks him what his favourite lesson is in school. Jamie replies history. The lawyer then steps outside the room and Jamie's dad chases after him and asks him like, what's going on here? Like, can you give us a little bit more information? And the lawyer basically says, the fact that they've barged down your door shows that they must have some damning evidence against Jamie. And after the lawyer says this, we see Jamie's dad like break down in tears. Like, he clearly doesn't know how to handle this situation. Like, nobody would in this situation. Jamie's dad then asks Jamie a simple question: did you do it? And Jamie says no, straight up to his dad. He promises him that he's done nothing wrong. And this is a constant theme throughout the series, which you're going to see, is Jamie kind of never admits that he's done wrong. He doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. After this, Jamie and his dad then get taken into the interview room where the two police officers from the opening scene are sitting in. They basically ask him quite a few questions about why he comments certain posts under women's Instagram photos. A lot of the time these comments are quite like provocative and quite nasty. He also then gets shown a photo of Katie Leonard, who we find out is the girl that has been murdered. Jamie then gets told that this girl was stabbed 7 times, and the lawyer at this point asks if they can have a break. However, Jamie's dad says no, because he believes that Jamie hasn't done anything wrong at this point. However, they then get shown a video of Jamie actually committing this crime. It's been caught on CCTV footage. And at this point, I was genuinely shocked that they had this on CCTV footage, because the way Jamie was talking was as if he had no clue what was going on. Like, no one in the audience could have, like, seen that he had been caught doing this. And as soon as Jamie sees this footage back, he just starts breaking down, and his dad is absolutely speechless. Like, he can't believe that his son would do something like this, which is insane, because like Jamie clearly has developed these feelings and developed, you know, this sort of belief system where he thinks it's okay to do that to someone, all without his dad knowing. D.I. Bascom then asks Jamie one simple question: why did you do this? Like, for what reason would you do this to somebody? And he just doesn't answer. The police officers then leave, and it's just Jamie and his dad in the room, and genuinely this is one of the most emotional scenes I've seen in a piece of media. They both just start breaking down, and genuinely it made us tear up watching it the first time. Like, this is so raw, and even watching it again, it makes us it makes us upset, because, oh my god. The way these two actors act out this scene is honestly incredible, and the rawness of it, it's genuinely insane. The lad who plays Jamie is called Owen Cooper, and he hasn't had any previous experience being in a role on a TV show before, or in a movie. This is his first acting gig, which is just pretty insane, especially considering it's all one take. Like, you're genuinely started at the hardest point. Anything else after this is going to seem like a breeze. Stephen Graham, who plays Jamie's dad in the show, said that they picked Owen because they just sensed a rawness from him. They wanted somebody from a working class background to give him an opportunity. They didn't want like somebody that was polished and somebody that had been in things before. And I just think that's such an amazing thing, and this is genuinely going to change Owen's life. And after this, episode 1 ends, and before we get on to episode 2, I just want to give some of my thoughts about episode 1 in general. One thing I really loved is how this family live in a normal house, like with a lot of Netflix Netflix dramas, you'll have like a school teacher who lives in like a multi-million-pound self-built property, and it really just kind of, it destroys any realness about it, and it's hard to connect to the characters. Straight away, this just seems real from the outset. Obviously, it's all shot in a continuous take, which helps. But one thing it does by just portraying a normal family, it really makes you think that it could happen to you, it could happen to anybody, it could happen to your next door neighbour, someone you know. Stephen Graham himself said the reason why they chose to shoot it in this kind of setting was the exact reason that I described.
To be thinking, there's no way he's done this kid couldn't do that. So for him to see this act committed by his boy, he's poleaxed, and his life from that moment on will never be the same again.
It's just such a great start to the show, and it really hooks you in, ready for the remaining 3 episodes. Episode 2 then begins 3 days after episode 1 took place, and this episode very much centres around school life, around Jamie's school life, the school he went to, and kind of how kids interact with each other in general. And it basically covers the fallout since Katie's death has been announced. And later in this episode, they actually call out an influencer by name. In this episode, we get our first glimpse into D.I. Bascom's life outside of work, as we see his son getting bullied in school. And the overall kind of vibe of the school is absolutely wild. Like, the kids at the school are just feral, they're just mental. There's a part where Katie's best friend attacks one of Jamie's friends at school. They're all outside because a fire drill is happening, and she just goes over and starts attacking him, calling him a murderer. Now, I would like to think that when I was in school, if somebody went over and attacked somebody and was calling them a murderer and genuinely looked really upset, like, I would feel some sort of empathy, like, towards that. However, the kids in this school all just start laughing. I'm sure one lad even says, "You've just got beat up by a girl, you sausage." Like, that's the only thing you've took from this. She's just accused him of murdering a young girl, and all you're bothered about is that he couldn't beat her up back. The police then ask to speak to Ryan, who is the boy that's just been beat up by Katie's best friend, Jade. They're asking him questions, trying to discover why Jamie would do such a thing, and he won't give them a straight answer. However, D.I. Bascom's son actually asks to speak with his dad in private about why he thinks that what happened. And he basically says that the lads in this school have been engaging with incel videos online. We all know the type of videos that he's referring to here, and apparently Katie would often, like, bully them, calling them incels because of their beliefs and the way they were commenting on girls' photos. And you can see by D.I. Bascom's face when he's listening to his son tell him all this, like, he's totally shocked. Like, he didn't realise that kids this young will be engaging with this sort of content. And I'm sure a lot of parents would also be shocked looking at this, because it's so hard to police what your kids are actually watching on their phones. Like, when they're in the bedrooms alone, you don't know what they're doing. They could be watching anything. Like, genuinely, you have no idea, and it's so hard to police, because if you overstep the mark and you're like, you know, can I see what's on your phone at all times, you're being a little bit too pushy. But then, like, it's so hard to find a balance. D.I. Bascom's son, like, references things from these incel videos, such as 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. They go very surface level with it, and they talk about certain emojis, etc., that the kids are using. They don't really give, like, a whole wide scope or a full description of the manosphere and of this sort of kind of incel content. Like, I can imagine if you don't know anything about this, it would seem pretty confusing. However, in the next scene, they basically give a better description for people that might not know what they're going on about, as one of the police officers actually mentions Andrew Tate by name.
It's the involuntary celibate stuff. It's the Andrew Tate shite.
I've heard the boys talking about him.
Now, that is absolutely huge in the scope of this series in general, that they've actually name-dropped Andrew Tate. After they did this, I started thinking, like, is this a positive thing that they've kind of called him out and, you know, they're kind of putting him as the person that is, like, the person you shouldn't listen to? Is it good that they've name-dropped him? Or is it bad that they've name-dropped him because it brings more attention to him? Like, more people are going to be searching, who is Andrew Tate? I definitely think there's arguments for and against this. It would be very interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments of what you think, if you think it's a good thing that they named him or not. I don't really know how else they would refer to him, just that baldy bloke on the internet that wears glasses, but then people might think you're thinking of Pitbull, right? And I don't want Mr. Worldwide getting any strays. That man is great. He made You Give Me Everything Tonight, okay? Give me everything. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Great song. Great song. They don't make songs like that anymore. But this is the show kind of giving you a little bit of insight into why Jamie has committed the crime that he has. They're basically inferring that Jamie has committed this crime because he engaged with this content and it kind of brainwashed him in a way. It's interesting because when the police officers use the word incel, like not even the teacher knows what that word means. And I believe this is something that teachers should be educated on, you know, like when they have teacher training days or just in general, just like in their meetings, they should be aware of these words so that if they hear them in the classroom, they can kind of, you know, call the kids out on it or just talk to them about it. It's interesting because like there's a saying that it takes a village to raise a kid. It's not just their parents, and it's very true. Like it's a whole ecosystem. Like kids pick stuff up from school, from their friends, from the internet. It's not just their parents they learn from anymore. And surely it can only be a good thing if teachers are made aware of things like this. Obviously, I know this TV show is it's a piece of fiction. It's not based on actual like true events every single step of this series, but I definitely believe it's meant to represent how things are in the real world. And relating back to when all of the kids were laughing when one of the lads was getting called a murderer while being beat up, I definitely think they're trying to say to you that this sort of content is kind of making children's minds kind of numb to real life things. It's making children not realise the severity of things. Like a young girl has been murdered here and they're laughing and they're basically saying, have you got a video of it? Like they're not understanding how crazy and how deep of a situation this is. One thing I do want to note as well, just before I move past this scene, is the connection between D.I. Bascom and his son was very much like the connection between Jamie and his dad. They're very distant from each other. Like there's a lot of similarities between Eddie, who is Jamie's dad, and D.I. Bascom. They both work a lot. They both kind of don't spend too much time parenting their son, and you can see like their sons don't really know how to interact with them, or they don't really know how to have this kind of son-father dynamic. Before both the police officers leave the school, D.I. Bascom asks to speak with Ryan, Jamie's friend, one more time, and when he enters his classroom, Ryan actually jumps out the window and sprints away, which just like signifies that he knows something that he doesn't want to tell the police. It's just so shady. Like, why did he run out the window? And again, because this series is shot in just one continuous take, like the tension this builds is honestly crazy as D.I. Bascom is sprinting after him and he eventually catches him and he manages to get out of Ryan that Ryan was the one who supplied Jamie with the kitchen knife. And it's really interesting what Ryan says here. Ryan says that he didn't know what Jamie was going to do. He thought he was just going to scare her with it, and somehow Ryan believes that that makes him okay, like that makes him a good person, or it makes him kind of void of any responsibility here. And again, the show's kind of trying to say to you that because of the content that these kids are kind of consuming online, they're not realising the severity of the actions they're taking here. After this, you see D.I. Bascom kind of interact with his son for the first time. He says that he wants to take his son for some food, which, you know, it looks like he doesn't usually do that, which is just a normal thing a dad does with a son when they love each other. And you can tell that D.I. Bascom is kind of worried about his own son and worried that his own son could kind of fall into the category that both Jamie and Ryan have fell into. Now, I know a lot of people have kind of got angry at a lot of things in this series, but one thing that I've really picked up on is when I have children, I want to have like open conversations with them about these sort of things, and I think it's just healthy just to, you know, you don't want to be too pushy with them, but you just kind of want to pick up on certain, you know, their opinions on certain things, etc., and kind of steer them in a direction you think is fit and you think is a good opinion to have. Episode 2 then ends with a shot of Jamie's dad taking flowers to the memorial of Katie, who Jamie unfortunately murdered. And this shows just how empathetic Jamie's dad actually is. Like, you know, I know that seems like a basic thing to do, but it is nice that he did do that and he just turned up, gave the flowers, didn't say anything to anyone, and then just went home. Like, he obviously feels distraught at what's happened. And overall, I believe episode 2 was a really strong episode. It definitely sets us up for the next episode, which in my opinion is the most brutal of them all. It definitely made me think about future generations that are going to come into this world, just by how the kids were interacting with, you know, this serious situation that has taken place. In my opinion, we haven't really seen the true effects of these kind of new age of influencers and their toxic content that they're putting out to kids. Obviously, this sort of viewpoint has been going for years and, you know, has had a certain effect on people in the process. However, a lot of time in the past with online sites, you have to search for content that you want to watch. Like when YouTube started, if you wanted to watch somebody, you would have to actually physically search their name and check if they've uploaded or they would be in your subscription box. Now, every single algorithm works in a way where you don't search for videos. Videos are pulled to you. You open YouTube and there's about 20 or 30 videos that they know you might click on or might be interested in. With TikTok, it's even worse because it's literally just scrolling. Like these videos, you're not searching for them. They're just put in front of your face. So can you imagine, as like a 12 or 13-year-old lad that has TikTok, if one of these kind of videos comes on your For You page, you've got a decision to make whether you think, oh, this is content that I subconsciously like or I don't like. Whereas before, those kids would have had to have actually searched that content. So now, every single 13-year-old who has TikTok has got to make the conscious decision to disagree or agree with influencers like Andrew Tate. And that to me genuinely is a bit scary. And that's why it's so important to have open conversations with young people in your family just to make sure, you know, they're staying on the right track. I definitely think a lot of other content contributes to the way that, you know, kids' minds is altered these days. For instance, Bonnie Blue as well, like the sort of content she does kind of promotes that men can use women however they want. They can use and abuse a woman who is in a very vulnerable position, and then they can literally just walk out the door after, and the next person's going to do the exact same, and no one even knows they're there. They're basically promoting that women are just these objects you can use and you have no repercussions for your actions. Now, moving on to episode 3. Prepare yourselves for this one, because this one is fucking intense. Just quickly, Donuts, before we proceed, we are on the hunt for 1 million subscribers. We've smashed 500,000. I've never hit 1 million on anything. To have 1 million donuts on this channel would genuinely be absolutely mental. So if you do want more content like this to binge watch when you're bored, please do consider pressing the subscribe button and joining the best community on the internet, the Donuts. At this point in the Adolescence universe, we are now 7 months on from the very first day that the house got raided. And this entire episode centres around Jamie meeting with a psychologist who's going to do an evaluation on him. This psychologist is called Bryony, and straight away she goes out of her way to make Jamie happy. She gets him a hot chocolate with sprinkles on. I don't know if this is kind of like to earn his trust in a way, or to kind of just start the meeting off on a good foot. And because of this, Jamie seems really warm with that. Like, he seems full of personality. He seems so much happier than he was when we first seen him in this series. And as the conversation goes on and Bryony starts to ask him a few questions, he starts to get really angry as the topic of what does masculinity mean to you, Jamie, comes up. It's almost like he doesn't want to face what masculinity means to him. Maybe he doesn't know what it means to him. Maybe he's got an opinion on masculinity that's a negative one or a positive. If for some reason he gets so angry at these questions. I love this episode because we get a real insight into how Jamie's mind works. It's genuinely fascinating. There's parts where he discusses that he wasn't really sporty, he's not really into sports, however his dad absolutely loves sports. He tells this anecdote of how Jamie's dad took him to football once, however Jamie wasn't that good, and every single time he made a mistake, his dad would kind of look away or be embarrassed in some sort of way. And obviously, like, from Jamie's point of view, how's that going to make him feel? It's going to make him feel like he's not good enough, like he's worthless, like not even his dad can look at him when he makes a mistake. Like, how's that going to affect his ego, his masculinity? All of these little things definitely have contributed to how Jamie's mind works. Jamie then goes on to say that he doesn't really feel like he's good at anything, which again is like a huge insight into why his personality and why he might have, like, you know, took an action like this against Katie. It's almost like he's constantly trying to prove to himself that he's good enough, that he's manly enough, he's masculine enough. It's very much like chip on your shoulder kind of attitude. And as he starts to open up, he gets angrier and angrier, and there's a point in this episode where he just knocks over his hot chocolate. It's almost like he feels like Bryony is controlling everything and he's kind of a pawn in the conversation. And because of the toxic masculinity and because of like his fragile ego, he can't handle that. And at this point, it gets really intense for Bryony, the psychologist, so she decides to walk outside of the room just to take a little bit of a break. However, she doesn't really get a break from like toxic masculinity, because when she's looking at the CCTV footage of Jamie in the room she's just left, the security guard is being like it's really weird. He's being like standing too close to her. He's mansplaining psychology to her, even though like she's the one who studied it, and I think he's reading a book on it, or he's taking a course on it. Very, very base like level knowledge, and he constantly stares at her. He's trying to flirt with her. It's just a really awkward vibe and was honestly hard to watch, especially when all she's trying to do is just do her job. Like, she doesn't need this. She's literally trying to deal with a child murderer right now. She doesn't need this guy mansplaining her own specialist subject to her. There is loads of like subtle nods to misogyny in this series, such as with this security guard guy. A lot of things have happened, such as there's a part where Jamie says that the only good thing his mom can do is cook up a roast, which obviously, you know, is just a really old-fashioned view of like the only thing a woman is good for is for cooking. In the last episode, the female teacher introduced D.I. Bascom by name, but she forgot the name, or almost forgot to introduce the woman police officer, D.I. Frank. And like I mentioned, Jamie chose his dad as the person he wanted in the rooms with him rather than his mom, even though his mom was the one who like knew more stuff about him and like knew about his intolerances and knew about he hates needles. However, Jamie just chose his dad because he just saw his dad as more of like a protector, I guess. There's just very subtle nods that I imagine a lot of women watching it definitely picked up on. I imagine a lot of guys watching possibly wouldn't have. Bryony, the psychologist, then enters the room again and she starts asking Jamie a lot of like sexual questions, like trying to understand his kind of belief system around sex in general. And Jamie gets really uncomfortable with these questions. Like, obviously as a 13-year-old, like talking about sex in general is really uncomfortable, but Bryony's just trying to get Jamie's perspective on what he thinks about certain things. For instance, Jamie says that he liked the pictures, the nude pictures he'd seen of Katie that she'd sent. However, he said that she had a flat chest. Like, obviously, like, she's 13. Like, why is a 13-year-old lad looking at another 13-year-old girl and going, she's got a flat chest? That's such a crazy thing. I'm pretty sure at this point he says to Bryony, no offense, as if like she's also got a flat chest. Like, the psychologist wouldn't even have knew that Jamie was thinking about her in like a sexual way, never mind commenting on her body. And you see her facial expressions like realize this and realize like, oh my god, like this 13-year-old sees me in like a sexual manner. There's just so many eye-opening moments in this one conversation. And again, I have to reiterate, this is all shot in one take. It's crazy. Like, the suspense you feel watching this episode, if you're actually taking it in, is genuinely insane. Like, I don't know how they kept me on the edge of the seat just by having one conversation, but they did. Jamie is then asked if he thinks that girls are attracted to him, and he says no because he believes that he's ugly. And again, the character of Jamie is so well-rounded and it all fits. Like, the fact that he didn't feel good enough for his dad, he feels ugly. Like, this is clearly someone with very low self-esteem that's trying to prove himself. This is why he acts out being angry all the time. It's almost like he's just angry at the world, which is why he probably engages with the content that they say that he does. And as Bryony is like peeling back the layers of Jamie, and Jamie's kind of realising that she's doing this, he's getting more angry and angry. He then gets up and throws his chair across the room. Like, this is the most intense part of this conversation. He then walks over to Bryony. He literally stands over her and just stares at her, trying to intimidate her, and then shocks her after a moment of silence. And you can see clear as day on Bryony's face, she is like intimidated. She is very like, she's just trying to do her job, and the fact that she has to like face up with this little monster is crazy. Also, for people that aren't women watching, like, this is a 13-year-old lad that is intimidating this grown woman. So can you imagine how a woman will feel if this is actually like somebody their own age, like shouting at them like this, you know, people that are in toxic relationships, etc. Like, the way that you speak to people genuinely has such a huge impact on them. And all I kind of want to say here is to any guys watching, I'm not trying to attack you at all, but just, there's no need to intimidate. Like, if you speak to your girlfriend this way, there's no need to speak to them this way. Like, you can sort things out without screaming at them, without shouting at them, because nothing gets sorted when you act like this. Again, this is not me attacking you. I'm just saying, and obviously it's easier for me to say when you're not emotionally in a situation. But the number one thing you should always try and do when you are feeling attacked or feeling like that is just calm down and just gather your thoughts and just chat it out. Because screaming and intimidating people, when has that ever worked? Again, I'm just trying to show how you can take elements from this TV show into your personal life. It then gets revealed by the psychologist that Jamie and his friends were actually heavily bullied in school. After this, Jamie then gets shown like a series of Katie's Instagram photos, and Jamie's asked to explain the kind of incel-y comments he's left underneath these. Jamie then talks about how Katie's photos were leaked or something, or how she was getting bullied about her photos and she was feeling really low at that moment, as any girl would. And this part of the conversation is arguably one of the most interesting parts, as Jamie says that when she was at her lowest, feeling this bad because what had happened, he thought he was being nice by asking her out on a date of some sorts. And this is so interesting because it's said that Jamie did actually like Katie in that sort of way. However, he's waited until she was at her lowest, until she was at her weakest, to try and gain from her, to try and then get her, because he doesn't believe he can get her when she's, you know, at her best, which is so disturbing when you think about it, how a 13-year-old is thinking like that. And apparently Katie rejected him and he got angry about this. And again, that's just so telling, because he thought because he was being nice to her, he deserved something in return. Like, he wasn't doing that just to be a nice person, even though he thought he was. He was actually trying to gain in that situation. There's just so many complex things going on here, and I've seen some people say that this is the most boring episode of TV they've ever seen. However, if you really just invest yourself into it and think about what they're trying to say to you, it's so interesting. I also do find it interesting how Jamie was like severely bullied by his peers. He was bullied by the lads at school a lot for these comments. He was hit, he was spat on. However, he never like thought of acting violently towards them. It was just when Katie left a few comments underneath these posts, he thought that he needed to be violent towards her, and because she rejected him. What I inferred from it is that it wasn't so much the bullying why he committed the crime against Katie, it was more so the fact he felt rejected, which again kind of attacked his pride and his fragile ego, which has been attacked so much, like on top of what his dad is like ashamed of him. It's almost like this was his last straw, and because this was a woman, he felt like he could take action against her. And it's at this point that Jamie lets it slip that he actually did kill Katie. He basically admits it, and then he goes, actually no, what have I just said there? I didn't say anything. What? Who killed who? Nobody killed anyone. And this is where the emotion of the conversation ramps up even more, is he's constantly seeking reassurance from the psychologist. He's constantly saying, yeah, but she deserved it, didn't she? Or do you think I'm a good person? He keeps like seeking validation and keeps seeking reassurance. However, the psychologist, Bryony, never gives it to him, and this just makes him more angry and angry. And I found this fascinating because I wonder, like, from his parents, if he does something bad, he gets the reassurance that he's still nice. I wonder if it's because he's just so insecure, he bases all of his self-worth on other people's opinions. I just think a lot of things in this conversation relate back to how, like, Jamie's opinion of himself and how he doesn't feel like he's good enough, and how he hates that he doesn't feel like he's good enough. He almost hates himself at 13 years old. And at this point, Jamie's just getting really aggressive. It looks like he's going to attack Bryony. He then gets dragged out of the room, and Bryony is just sat in this room alone, breaking down in tears at like what she's just had to face. It's almost like the severity of what she's just been through has just hit her like a ton of bricks. And one thing I took from her just breaking down is, although again this is a piece of fiction, this is a TV show, it's not actual people, it's people acting as people. I'm glad I've just given the definition of a TV show there. But you're glad I'm here. But this will be happening on the ground level with kids in these facilities, with psychologists, and it's people, it's everyday working people that have to pick up the shite because of what these kids are consuming online or consuming in their everyday lives. Like, the stuff, unfortunately, what certain influencers say does hold a lot of weight and does actually affect every single working person. These people who are sitting on these podcasts thinking that they know everything and just spouting absolute shite, they think that their words don't hold any weight, but they do. Unfortunately, they do. Like, we're seeing this clear as day in this series, and I feel like I have a good perspective on this because, you know, offline, something close to me has happened in this situation, which not the exact situation, not the severity of it, but something very similar, where I don't want to get too much into it, but just trust me, this sort of shit is affecting real life people, real life kids. Genuinely, it's having a negative impact, and it's just so scary, and it's so good that a TV show like this has sparked so much conversation, and it's so good that people are actually talking about this. Like, this is what spreading awareness is. I'm so happy that a piece of media has managed to do this and managed to break the wall and affect so many communities to come together and talk about what they've witnessed here. There's also very subtle things in this episode which are just great. For instance, Bryony brought in a sandwich for Jamie at the start of the episode, and then towards the end of the episode where Jamie takes a bite out of it and Jamie then leaves the room, Bryony like goes to pick it up, but she can't even like face picking it up. Like, she can't even face that this little monster in her eyes has touched this sandwich. It just shows her opinion of Jamie. Now, before we get on to the final episode, I just want to give my overall viewpoint on this episode in general. Like I said earlier, a lot of people are really angry at this specific episode and have their viewpoints on it, and I don't want to discuss them. If you want to seek that out yourself. A lot of people feel like it's attacking masculinity, but in my opinion, I don't feel like this episode is attacking masculinity. I think it's attacking toxic masculinity, but not masculinity in general. And in my opinion, like, it's a good thing to be masculine. Okay, like, being masculine is fine. What this show is trying to say is, when you're toxic with your masculinity, that's when it's not fine. That's when you need to draw the line. When 13-year-olds are going round intimidating grown women that can't run. Like, what is this? How can you be angry at this? Also, I just want to give credit to both Owen Cooper and Erin Doherty, who played the psychologist and Jamie. These two obviously filmed this all in one take, and although they kind of hated each other at a lot of points in this conversation, the chemistry and the way they bounced off each other was genuinely insane. Like, I would have loved to have been on set and just seen these two people just go about their work and just how they're creating so much emotion and so much drama. I actually watched a few interviews with both of them, and they said the fact that it was shot in one take actually helped them a lot, because instead of having to stop and kind of disrupting the emotion, they're actually getting angry themselves and getting hyped themselves because they're literally just running this and bouncing off each other. And again, that's why I believe the fact that this series was shot in one take is genuinely, it just adds so much to it, and I wish there was more shows like this. I know that Stephen Graham done a previous piece of media called Boiling Point, where that was very engaging because it was all in one shot. I love it. I feel like this is definitely a genre that needs to be happening more often. Moving on, we now come to episode 4, which is the final episode of Adolescence. In this episode, it mainly focuses on the fallout of Jamie's family, how Jamie's family are kind of reacting to all of this 13 months on from the original day it all unfolded. This entire episode covers one single day, and it happens to be Jamie's dad's birthday, and I really like how they chose to kind of focus in on the murderer's family. Like, a lot of times in TV shows, rightly so, they focus in on the victim's family, as they should. However, you rarely see the perspective of how it changes the murderer family's lives. One thing I find interesting straight away about this episode is Jamie's dad opens up a card from his own dad, so we get our first glimpse into how their relationship was. And apparently apparently Jamie's dad's dad didn't actually write out this letter, like it wasn't his handwriting, and the words were very minimal and he only put a 5 in it. So this kind of shows to us that, you know, Jamie's grandfather didn't really have that much of a chemistry with Jamie's dad. Very much what it seems like Jamie's dad hasn't had much of a chemistry with Jamie. It's almost like the cycle hasn't been broken here of how father and sons interact with each other. And straight after this, we see that Jamie's dad's van has the word nonce written on it with graffiti, which was like kind of weird because this doesn't really, like, what does this really relate to? Like, I was thinking, oh god, is Jamie's dad gonna get exposed for something? Jamie's dad then gets both Jamie's mum and Jamie's sister into the van and they travel to a hardware store to get some like cleaning products that they can wipe the graffiti off the van with. And this journey to the shop lasts quite a long time in this episode, obviously with it being one take. But one thing I really picked up about it is they're a really loving family. Like the way that the dad interacts with his daughter and just the mom interacts with the dad, they just seem like they're somewhat happy. Like it seems like a very positive environment to kind of grow up in, and I feel like that's what they're trying to show here, is that yes, Jamie's dad gets angry and he has like a bad temper, and this is obviously not a good thing, but still as a family unit they're just like a normal family. They're not like the model family, they're not a terrible family, they're just a normal family. And this just emphasizes even more how shocking it is that somebody like Jamie can, you know, commit the crime that he has when he's grew up in a family like this. I've seen many people say that Jamie's dad is completely to blame for what happened, and in my opinion I don't agree with that. I think he definitely has some part in this just because of the way that he's interacted with Jamie and because of his anger issues, etc. You can't like void him of any responsibility, like it is his dad. But lots of people have said, oh, he never saw him, he was always working, but that's just what happens. Like in working class families, like dads work a hell of a lot. Like my stepdad in my family household, worked night shift as a lorry driver for like 14-hour shifts. Like that's just what happens. They then arrive at the shop and Jamie's dad is going around the shop kind of looking for the right products to take this writing off his van, and he gets directed to a sales assistant that works there, and the sales assistant is he's acting really shady, and then he says that he recognises Jamie's dad from the news and says to him in private where no one's listening, I'm on your side, I'm on Jamie's side, and he convinces him to start like a GoFundMe or a crowdfunding so that people like this sales assistant can contribute money to the fund so that Jamie can have the best lawyer possible. And this is it's like freaky. It's kind of trying to show us that people who have these extreme beliefs, that somebody who literally has been caught on CCTV murdering a 13-year-old girl has supporters in everyday life. What's even more alarming is then this guy then just goes to help a mother and a child just like normal, and they wouldn't know that he has the viewpoint that he has. It's basically trying to say to us that people in everyday lives have these extreme beliefs and you would never know. After this, Jamie's dad kind of loses his head a little bit. He's not really listening to what's going on around him. This definitely affects him in a negative way, and then he sees the lads that wrote the writing on his car across the car park and chases after them, and he actually gets hold of one. He starts like shaking him, starts threatening him, saying like, you should never come near my family ever again. He then returns to his van. He's just so hyped and so angry that he just gets the paint that he's bought and just hoys it over the van to cover the writing. No thought at all. And some people have insinuated that this is him trying to just paper over the cracks of like the situation that is at hand rather than actually kind of trying to go through it and start again. Whether you believe that or not, I think it's an interesting take on it. A lot of stuff in this show is done on purpose, so that very well could be a thing that they did on purpose. But one thing this scene really does kind of reveal is Jamie's dad's temper, which he obviously has passed down to Jamie, who also has a terrible temper. And when they return home, Jamie's mother actually says to Jamie's dad, like, you have a really, really bad temper. Now, the conversation they have when they get home is really intense, and we're going to get onto that soon. However, I want to talk about the journey home when they're driving home in the van, because at this point they get a call from Jamie where he's ringing them from the facility that he's being held at. He rings to wish his dad a happy birthday, and genuinely, like, I started tearing Oh, even thinking about this section, I started tearing up during this section. Okay, God, I'm losing me toxic masculinity reputation today. Promise I'm hard, guys. Promise. He wishes his dad a happy birthday, and the way that his dad interacts with him, and I know it's, you know, it's definitely because of what he's done, and that's affected the relationship, but the relationship between Jamie and his dad is so cold. Like, there's so many awkward silences, and they clearly don't have a bond. That's the word. They don't have a bond with each other. It's almost like he's speaking to somebody that he doesn't even know, and vice versa. And after so many prolonged periods of awkward silences, Jamie then tells his dad that he's changing his plea from pleading innocent to guilty, and his dad just doesn't respond, just doesn't say anything at all. And after this, Jamie says dad like once more, and I feel like I need to show this. If this video gets took down because I react to this, I don't care.
Dad?
Yeah?
I'm sorry. And happy birthday.
Thank.
That is like, that is mad. I have no words. That is my assessment of that. That is mad. Genuinely, that really, I cried like 3 times during this series, I'm not afraid to admit. This really touched us, this series. Wow. There is a lot of interesting things that happen in this conversation. Like, for instance, Jamie believes that he's only on the phone to his dad. When his mum starts talking and he realises that his mum and his sister's in the car, he gets really angry and says, like, I thought it was just me dad. Like, it's almost like he just completely disregards that they're even part of his family, which is just sad because his mum is the person that, like I said previously, had rang the facility that he was being kept at to talk about his food intolerances and just trying to make it overall better for him, and she knew a lot more about him. However, every single time he feels a little bit in trouble, he just contacts his dad, who is his appropriate adult that he picked. And it's almost like Jamie has more respect for his dad just because he's a man. That's the top and bottom of it. And it's almost like his mum could, you know, move worlds for him, and he still wouldn't see her on the same level as what he sees his dad for just being a man. And I think this really opens up the conversation about how kind of, you know, young lads like look at both their parents, both their mum and their dad. Both the parents then go into the house and they go upstairs and they talk about how Jamie is changing his plea, and the dad is like very closed up. He doesn't want to talk about his feelings. It's very much like that typical toxic masculinity where lads don't want to talk about their feelings and they just bottle it all up, whereas his mum's really trying to connect and really trying to, you know, spark a conversation here so they can kind of just, you know, be on the same wavelength, kind of half the problems that they're going through, like lean on each other. She's definitely trying to be more emotional. Jamie's dad then starts to open up after Jamie's mom convinces him to, and he opens up about how his dad would like hit him as a child, and he promised himself when he had children he would never do that. And honestly, this is like such a powerful thing because he's managed to break the cycle of, you know, physical things going on in the family. I can't say that A word, otherwise I'll get tucked down. But you know what I'm alluding to here. And although it was great that he was able to break that cycle and not pass that down to his kids, his son still grew up to be so much worse than what he grew up to be. And it just shows, like I said earlier in this video, it's not just the parents that kids take stuff from anymore. It's online, it's school. There's so many different factors that go into forming how a child is going to grow up. And that's why it's so important that everyone is educated on the things that their children are engaging with. But I really like this section because Jamie's dad is doing a lot of like introspective kind of reflection, and he's like, there's times when he says, am I even any better than my dad? And these are really difficult questions that he's now having to ask himself because of what Jamie's done. And it is important to note that Jamie's sister is a really nice girl. Like, she is nothing like Jamie. And this is also another point that, is it really down to the parenting skills of the mum and dad? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments of what you think. But she has obviously grew up the same way as Jamie, but she hasn't, you know, became that type of person. In this conversation, there's also another really harrowing thing that the parents say. They say that when they thought that Jamie was alone in his room, they thought he was safe because when they were younger and they were in their rooms, like, nothing could hurt them. However, this kind of shows that when kids are alone in their bedrooms, arguably that's when they're the unsafest. That's when they're alone on their phones, like scrolling TikTok, engaging with content that you have no clue about. Arguably, they're safer just playing out with their mates. The entire series then ends with Jamie's dad going into Jamie's room, and genuinely, he like starts just breaking down. And I cried at this bit. Of course I did. The waterworks came on. He's just sitting there, like apologising, just like he's almost treating Jamie's bears if it's Jamie, just like talking to it, apologising, saying he should have done better. And it's really sad to see, because the effects that Jamie's actions have had on this family is just catastrophic, and they will never recover from this. And they keep blaming themselves. That's actually so sad, man. Well, I can't cry in a YouTube video again. Oh, even turning me back on my audience. How rude. And this is the first time we really see Jamie's dad like be emotional and just break that barrier of like acting tough for no reason. And again, I just want to say overall on this episode, Stephen Graham is such a fantastic actor. He's truly amazing. Like everything he's in, he just smashes it out the park. Like this man is genuinely like, This has to win some sort of award or something. This is great. His acting skills. And that is the end of Adolescence. It's 4 parts. It's short. I think 4 parts is probably enough. One thing that I could be critical of is I think that I would have liked to have seen the trial. I would have liked to have seen the psychologist's thoughts. I know we kind of know exactly what she's thinking and we can infer it, but just like her expert opinion would have been really good to hear read out just as like a final chapter. Maybe as we see the sentencing. I would have liked to have seen that. However, because they didn't include that, this says to me that this series was very much meant to spark conversation more than be like a complete piece of media, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'd say that this is like top 3 series that I've ever watched in terms of like storyline. However, I would say it's number 1 for powerfulness. I don't think I've ever watched something where I've, felt so much emotion, especially in such little episodes. I know a lot of other people have said that like they didn't feel anything and they thought that it was just crap, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. However, I definitely think what your opinion is of this show kind of says what kind of views you have, in my opinion. One thing that is for sure, that everyone that watches this has an opinion of it. No one leaves this without saying anything. Like no one leaves this and goes, do you want to just get a takeaway now? I definitely think you want to have a conversation about it. Even Keir Starmer has brought this up in Parliament. Like, that's how far this show has reached. And I guess that was the main aim of it. They just wanted to get as much conversation sparked about this topic, and which I think is a really good thing. This is what Stephen Graham, who created the show, said the exact reason why he created it was.
I read an article in the paper. It was about a young boy who stabbed a young girl to death. And then there was, a couple of months later on the news, there was a piece about a young boy who stabbed a young girl to death. And these were at opposite ends of the country. And I just, if I'm really honest with you, Jim, I just, it hurt my heart. And I just think, what kind of a society we're living in at the moment where young boys are stabbing young girls?
And he said that this is the reason why he wanted to make it, to bring awareness to this. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing, and this can only be a good thing. Like, nobody, I don't care who you are, unless you're a terrible person, wants young guys murdering young girls. Nobody wants that. So surely bringing awareness about this can only be a positive thing, especially with the subtle nods in this show of why Jamie acted the way he does. This helps other people stop this from happening in their own lives. I feel like in years to come, this is going to be such a significant piece of work that Stephen Graham has put out there, and I feel proud of him for doing it, especially from the background that he grew up in. I have seen that the other writer of the show said that he's received like tremendous amounts of abuse from people for creating this, which it's like, why are people doing this? Why would you send abuse to someone for creating fiction? Like, if it's fiction in its entirety, yes, it's got a lot of meaning and you can take a lot of things from it, but it's a Netflix TV show, and you sending abuse to the writer just proves everything they're saying in this. You're just confirming the things they've wrote about. How can you not see this? Anyway, it would be really great to hear your thoughts on it. And again, like, I've came in talking about this from an outside perspective for a lot of the themes discussed in this, so it would be great great if anybody just can like kind of give other people in the community more of a perspective on certain things, if I missed anything out. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I really did try and be as empathetic as possible and really just speak about my opinions on what I've seen. If you want to see another video from me, which is similar to this one, where I covered the Ruby Frankie documentary, click this video right here because there's a lot of stuff in here I think you'll find interesting. Or if you want a more light-hearted watch from me after this video, click this video right here and let me know if you want me to cover more kind of, you know, like series like this from Netflix, things that drop, because I really found this interesting. And as always, donuts, thank you very much for dedicating the time to support what I do. I really, really appreciate you. Bye-bye. I'll let you go now.